Danbury, Connecticut, and we're having sleet right now. All sleet. This is not rain. This is not snow. This is literally all sleet. There's not a drop of rain. Temperature throughout the day has only hovered in the low to mid 30s. Forecast calls for sleet, change over to freezing rain, and then all rain. I've been looking at the North Atlantic Oscillation, and it's going negative big time. The Arctic Oscillation is even more so negative, and the PNA is actually positive. Normally, this will set up an event where you would have major Arctic outbreaks going into the United States. However, you're having very, very cold weather in Siberia. In fact, the coldest weather in the northern hemisphere right now is centered over Siberia. All of the coldest air is basically locked up over Siberia. And this is causing very cold weather, not just over Siberia, but Japan. All of Japan is locked in this very cold pattern. So is Korea. In fact, there is so much Arctic air entrenched into the Sea of Japan that there's ocean effect snow that is going all the way south to 30 degrees north latitude, ocean effect snow. Something we've almost never seen in the United States. Like, this almost never happens. You almost never see snow so far south. There's this island in Korea. Hold on, let me look up the map so I'll tell you the name of the island. Jeju. J-E. So it's called Jeju Island. Jeju Island. Jeju Island or Jeju Island in South Korea, which is well south of the mainland. So it's halfway between South Korea and Japan, going north to south. There was snow on that island, which is around the same latitude, north latitude, as Brunswick, Georgia, almost. Central Georgia, central South Carolina. So like Columbia, South Carolina. Or like southern South Carolina. So like just south of Charleston. And keep in mind that the snow was extending for another couple hundred miles south of the island. Ocean effect snow. So all this Arctic air is locked up over Siberia and Eastern Asia. But you're having a positive PNA, which would normally create Arctic outbreaks in the United States. But the thing is, because the Arctic Oscillation is negative, you're having bits and pieces of the polar vortex going in every which direction. And because Siberia is, most of it is so far north, you're having very cold outbreaks there. So the polar vortex is basically centering over Siberia. Yes, there is the polar vortex over Siberia, and I'm not kidding you. There is models showing that the polar vortex will center over Siberia, which normally this polar vortex never goes that far south. Keep in mind, Siberia, where I'm talking about, is the same latitude as basically southern Canada, as like British Columbia, Vancouver. Imagine the polar vortex almost covering the whole United States. Imagine an Arctic outbreak that just does not want to leave. I don't mean like 2014, 2015, or 2013, 2014. I mean something even worse, where you're having sub-zero temperatures in this stubborn polar vortex that just does not want to leave. And it's further south. And this pattern could switch. It won't stay like this for the whole winter. And even if it does, we will have a negative AO. Once you have a negative AO, bits and pieces of the polar vortex will be zipping all around because you don't have a central polar vortex where everything rotates around. The polar vortex is very weak right now, and so pieces of it are going everywhere. But why is it that the polar vortex is not extending to the United States? Why is all the cold air still being locked up over Alaska and Canada? Is because you're having a La Nina. A La Nina favors warmer weather in the United States. Oh my God, not again. So basically, the polar vortex, when you're having a negative AO, a negative NAO, and a positive PNA, this almost keyword, favors cold, snowy weather for the eastern third of the United States. But keep in mind, most of our coldest weather does not occur until the end of January and most of February. That's when we usually get our coldest weather during these type of setups. Not in December and not in the beginning of January, but later on. I think this January and February will be the coldest months of the year, especially after the middle of January. That's what I believe. I think that's when you're going to have the polar vortex come into the United States, especially in February, March. I think most of this winter will be very cold, but not for the next couple weeks. It will be cold, there will be snow, but it's not going to be Arctic outbreaks. We're not talking about Arctic outbreaks until maybe end of January. That's when we will start having Arctic outbreaks, true Arctic outbreaks. So let me check the models. Well, now the sleet's starting to pick up a little bit. Well, now the sleet is starting to pick up again. Sleet is starting to pick up just a little bit, which is signifying that the precipitation layer is getting thicker, that the moisture level is getting thicker. Temperature is right around 33 degrees right now. As the humidity goes up, as the dew point goes up, the temperature will go down. So I think we will probably have a low temperature this evening around 30, 31. So it's becoming a little icy right now, just a little bit. But it's mostly wet. Thankfully, there's not much freezing going on, as temperatures are still a little bit above freezing. But once we get to sub-freezing temps, briefly, and the precip may change over to rain, we will likely have some icing on the roads. Not enough to cause power outages. Here, only a trace to maybe 1/10 of an inch of ice is expected, but that could be enough to cause traffic accidents. That's why there's a winter weather advisory in effect for this area here. Primarily exactly because of what we're getting right now. So again, let me check the GFS. I will tell you what is going to be going on for the next 2 weeks, basically. So yes, there should be more in the way of winter weather coming in for the next few weeks. However, the setup that... Damn it. The setup that creates Arctic outbreaks will likely start in February. You know, as we'll be having clipper systems. And also, you probably need a more positive PNA.
Drinking alcohol on Metrocon trains and at our stations is banned from noon New Year's Eve until noon New Year's Day. Metro wishes you a safe and happy holiday.
Well, that means you can drink alcohol now because noon is already passed. Yeah, they don't want people drinking in the midst of the new year. Anyway, I strongly believe that the worst of the weather for the eastern 2/3 of the country, in terms of the coldest weather, should start in early February. That's when I think things will get really, really cold, as the Arctic Oscillation will stay weak, and you'll get the NAO to stay negative and the PNA to possibly go more positive. And a more positive PNA, especially if it dips down and then goes positive, will give time for the Arctic air to recharge. Because the Arctic air is not having enough time to recharge itself before it's broken up by, storms slamming into the Arctic from Alaska, going into Alaska, into the Arctic, which breaks up the polar vortex. Also, you want to have a sudden stratospheric warming event. You want to have an SSW. You don't want to just have a negative AO during the whole winter, because that's going to break up any Arctic outbreaks. It will, not give enough time for the Arctic air to build. What you want is you want to have a slightly negative Arctic oscillation. Slightly negative. You don't want it to go so negative and stay there like it is now, because that's not going to give time for it to charge. But we are in a pattern where often you have blocking patterns. La Niñas typically favor blocking patterns in the Atlantic and in Greenland. La Niñas typically favor that, especially if you have warm waters in Labrador. We're having that. The only thing is you're getting mixed signals coming in from northern Alaska. The Bay of Alaska. The northern part of the Bay of Alaska, you're having warm temps, which supports a positive PNA, which what we're seeing right now. This is known as the PDO, the Pacific Decadal Oscillation. Right now, the PDO, in terms of weather patterns, is in its positive or warm phase. We're currently seeing the warm phase of the Arctic of the Pacific Decadal Oscillation. It's been primarily in its warm phase the past few years. The Atlantic this year is in its warm phase. And when you have an Atlantic in its warm phase, you typically have bigger storms, but not as much cold air. Normally, when we're having all these Arctic outbreaks in 2013, 2014, 2015, so the winter of 2013, 2014, 2014, 2015, you were having a setup that supported what we're seeing now. However, you didn't have a consistently negative AO. The AO was flipping from neutral to negative, neutral to negative. Right now, we're just stuck in negative. We are not going positive. The Arctic Oscillation is staying negative right now throughout. And so is the NAO. What does this mean? It means we're going to get a lot of snow in the Northeast this winter. But I don't know if it's going to be as cold as, say, 2013, 2014, or 2014, 2015. But I think that's going to be more of an occurrence in February. Once we get into February, that's a large possibility that we could get a bigger chance for coastal storms, more Arctic outbreaks. Basically, in 2014, 2015, that's what happened. The winter that Boston got all of its snow, most of the snow, if not all of it, came in January and February. And it wasn't just in January, it was in the middle of January. The beginning of January had almost no snow. In fact, the biggest storms in Boston all happened through most of February. February is the worst month for Boston. And the Arctic Oscillation was negative but not super negative for most of the winter. The NAO was neutral to slightly negative, but it wasn't as negative consistently as we are now. And in fact, that's why a lot of the storms ended up going further north to Boston and not New York City. If the NAO was more negative, we probably would have had New York City and Boston both being buried. But why did this happen? Why, even though the blocking pattern wasn't so strong, was because you had a very positive PNA, which caused a big ridge to build over California. You had a big trough on the East Coast. We're not quite seeing that this year. This year, we're seeing more of a pattern that is reminiscent of El Nino, actually. Why am I saying like an El Nino? Well, you had a positive PNA during the El Nino of 2015, 2016. That winter, we had a positive PNA. In fact, very positive. But no Arctic air was spilling into the United States. We had almost no Arctic outbreaks. Even though the PNA was very positive, you weren't having the counterbalance of having a negative AO and a negative NAO. You were not having that. However, this year we are. But why is it that this year is so warm? Why are we not getting these Arctic outbreaks? Is because we've been in this pattern so long that we're not getting enough warming in the Arctic. I mean, cooling in the Arctic. And also the NAO only started going negative now. And also the AO has been negative for weeks now. For weeks. It's been primarily negative. Oh, great. We are transitioning now to freezing drizzle. I think we're transitioning to freezing drizzle. Hold on. Because I'm seeing light precipitation coming down. Let me see if it bounces or if it just lands on my jacket. Hold on. Yep. We're having freezing drizzle. Sleet has transitioned to freezing drizzle now. Or drizzle. I don't know what the temperature is, but based on how my hands are freezing, I'm going to say it's below freezing right now. Though the bigger drops are still frozen, but the smaller ones are liquid. Could mean that actually temperatures here are below freezing. Oh, look at that. There's something floating in the air. It's right there. It's coming. That's an east wind coming in. East wind aloft. Yeah, this storm is going to bring east winds, though. New York City might briefly get into the low 50s tomorrow. Anyway, well, let me zip up my jacket. I'm freezing, and I cannot go inside right now because they closed down the station. Train should be coming in within the next 20 minutes. I am absolutely freezing right now. So this winter, I think February will be very cold and snowy. I think the snowiest month this year will be February. I've already made my winter forecast. I'm calling for 40 to 60 inches of snow for New York City this winter. And for Boston, and here's who's going to get most of the snow. It's going to be the Mid-Atlantic and Northeast. Washington, I'm calling for 20 to 40 inches of snow. Sounds like a lot, but the setup is very similar in terms of the NAO and AO to the 2009-2010 winter, where the NAO was very negative. In fact, if the NAO goes really negative, you can get these storms to back in and just bury the Mid-Atlantic with feet and feet of snow, like what happened back in 2009 and 2010.
A face covering that covers the nose and the mouth is required when traveling on trains or in a station, regardless of social distancing. If you forget yours, please ask the station ambassador or train crew member to provide one. If you don't wear a mask, you may receive a fine. Stay safe and thank you for riding with us.
Anyway, so yes, this winter is definitely going to be cold and snowy. I just put on my jacket. In fact, I'm expecting most of the storms in New York City for the next couple months, unless the patterns change, to be primarily snow and or mix events. There will be a couple of all rain events, absolutely. Like all rain, beginning to end, and all rain. You'll have a few inland runners. Even when you have a blocking pattern, you still will get these events where you get inland runners that run up the Great Lakes, but those are very few and far between during negative NAOs. Let me check the climate forecast system, the CFS, which does more long-term forecast. So I just checked the Arctic Oscillation, and the NAO and the PNA. There is some evidence that we could have a possible January thaw towards the end of this month. Oh my God, the sleet is becoming large now. Again, it's like It's becoming noisy again. Hold on. I want to see how big some of those pellets are. Ooh, that was a pretty big one. Wow. Okay, hold on. Okay, now the sleet is becoming pretty large. It's about, yeah, we're getting some large sleet right now. Now the sleet is becoming at least millimeter size now. Like a few minutes ago, it was like really tiny. It was like almost like tiny granules of sleet. Now the pellets of sleet are becoming a little bit more larger. Like, it's not big, but it is becoming more formidable. Hey. I'm going to have to end this live stream in a few minutes because my phone is down to 30% and I need to charge my phone. So I'm going to do this for another 5 minutes and then I have to go. Oh, damn, the sleet is large. Can't even, like... As I'm walking now, there's enough sleet that it crunches under my feet right now. Yep, the sleet is literally crunching under my feet as I walk. Now we're getting some very slight accumulation. Well, that's really cool. Okay, so right now, that's really cool that you ordered a 25-inch ram shofar. I mean, I just hope they don't kill, the sheep for that, the rams. All right, so right now we're getting light sleep temperatures around 32, 33 degrees. Very likely, as the precipitation is getting heavier, the dew point will be going up and the temperature will be going down. So I'm currently estimating that the current surface temperature is right around the freezing mark right now, or just above it slightly. But the forecast here in Danbury is for the temperature to go down to freezing. But about an hour ago, the dew point was around 24. And the surface temperature was 34. So if you do the math, say the humidity goes up to 100%, right? You will have a surface temperature of 29 degrees with a dew point around 29. But say it goes up by maybe 20 or 40%. So you would have the dew point go up by like 1 or 2. The dew point and temperature go down by about 1 or 2. So you'll have a temperature of roughly around 32 degrees with the dew point in the upper 20s. That's where I believe where we're at right now. In fact, even though the precipitation is all sleet, the cold, dry layer that where the sleet is falling through is why we had virga. But the temperature above the sleet layer is actually above freezing. The warm layer is actually above this very cold layer near the surface. It's not even unheard of to have sleet. Normally you have sleet when you have colder temperatures closer down to the surface, and you have a warmer layer above. But sometimes it's not uncommon. It's rare, but it's not unheard of though, to have sleet, even though temperatures are above 40 degrees. I've been in Atlanta. Temperatures were around 43, 44 degrees. Dew points were in the teens, and yet there was sleet coming down. I'm like, how is this happening? But the thing was, just a couple thousand feet above the surface, maybe 1,000 feet above, you were having temperatures in the 20s and 30s because the air was very dry. So the frozen pellets were falling fast enough into the secondary warm layer near the surface that it didn't have time to melt and came down as sleet. It was mixed with rain. Well, I gotta be going right now. My phone is down to about 30% right now, and I need to conserve my battery. All right, thank you so much for everything. Bye. Yes, the catalyzation zone where the precipitation is forming is all snow. It's about 15,000 feet up, but however, about 20,000 feet up, because the precipitation in this case is falling from a higher elevation, maybe 15,000 feet. I would say between 7,000 and 8,000 millibars. But somewhere below that, you're having a warm tongue where temperatures are warming into the low to mid 30s, which is causing the snow to melt into rain. And then you're having the rain that's falling through that warmer layer fall down to this colder layer below, and it's forming into sleet. Anyway, since you're here now, I'm going to explain why this winter is going to be very snowy for the Northeast. Not necessarily cold, but very snowy. You're having a setup for right now we're having a very negative NAO setting up, a slightly positive PNA, and a very negative Arctic oscillation. Reason we're not getting much cold air is because most of it is in Siberia right now. Yeah. A block of ice, a very wide catalyst zone. Block of ice. That's why you're getting all sleet right now.
Friday, January 1st, Metro North is operating weekends. We encourage customers to purchase tickets in advance from our ticket vending machines or by MTA e-tix
But
or
it's
mobile ticketing app. See current timetable for details or visit us at new.mta.info for schedule information. Drinking alcohol on Metro North trains and at our stations is banned from noon New Year's Eve until noon New Year's Day. Metro North wishes you a safe and happy holiday.
so basically that's impossible. You cannot have. But imagine, yes, I would imagine that you would have so much snow coming down, so much. It's going to be phenomenal, especially if everything is below freezing, going all the way down. Yeah, imagine that. It would be crazy. But let me go back to what I was talking about earlier, is the negative Arctic oscillation. Normally, when you have a negative AO, you get Arctic outbreaks into the United States. But the thing is, the Arctic oscillation has been negative for so long, and it's so negative that the polar vortex is completely broken up. And while a negative AO normally brings Arctic air into the United States, it is too broken. And also you're having a La Nina. And so it's affecting how weather patterns normally operate. So the Arctic oscillation, normally when it's negative, would send bits and pieces of Arctic outbreaks into the United States. And especially when you have a negative NAO to boot, and negative North Atlantic oscillation. But you also need to look at the PNA, the Pacific North American pattern, or PNA. Normally when the PNA is positive, you would get cold outbreaks in the United States and warmer weather in eastern Alaska and the Pacific West Coast. However, while the PNA isn't positive right now, it's very slightly positive. It's almost considered neutral. But if you had a PNA value of closer to 2, then you might get colder weather here. And the PNA is scheduled to flirt between positive and neutral, and then may go back down to neutral, maybe even slightly negative towards February, which will mean the Arctic oscillation will become more neutral, and NAO might trend back to neutral. Well, the train's coming. Hold on, I gotta tie my shoelaces. Hold on. Ah, I got some stuff for my mom for New Year's. Here comes the PDC, the GE P40DC engine. It's a very noisy diesel engine. It literally sounds like a thunder, like when it comes in. It doesn't have that hum. It just has this thunderous. You almost hear like a. It sounds like a. Train should have been here at 7:11, but it's running a few minutes ahead of schedule. In fact, when I arrived here in Danbury earlier today, train was running about 5 minutes ahead of schedule. Yeah, the Earth is a massive stone, but stones with many cracks in it and molten at its just a few tens of miles below. Here it comes. Here comes the Genesis PDC 42 engine. You're gonna hear that thunderous boot, like those thunderous beats. You're gonna hear it. Get ready for it. Oh, look at the sleet coming down in front of it. You hear it, right? Yeah, an actual train. It's operated by MTA New York's by the MTA. You hear it? You hear that? Do, 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 do. Finally. This is the train that I'm gonna get on. Thank God they have chargers on board, or actually one for every car. If anyone else needs a charge, I'm screwed. Though I do have some food with me here. Oh, more people than I expected. Oh, listen to it again. They're gonna replace these. They're gonna replace these locomotives soon. Hi. It's icy out there. Be careful. Here it goes. It's all right. I gotta go now. My phone's down to 20%. I'll talk to you later. Hey, thank you so much for watching. Let's see. Yep, an actual train. It's icy out there. Sleeting, so yeah. Oh, let me see if we can see that. Oh, look at that. There's some lower clouds coming in. That's probably the layer where temperatures are slightly warmer. It's probably raining at the base there. That's not where the precipitation is forming. That's just the lower clouds coming in at maybe 7,000 feet, 8,000 feet. That's your warmer layer, and then you have colder layer temperatures in mid 20s below. Thanks for watching. Bye.